Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. We haven't done a deck tech in a little while, and that's because the decks are really not changing a hell of a lot between the events. It's the same kind of like
Until now.
oldhim
Until now.
until now. But I think this one is so. I wasn't actually thinking about deck techs, and then I was watching the Calling Singapore, and I saw our good friend Denny, who we had on earlier for the 9-0 Battle Hardened Lexi video, and he's a hell of a Ranger player. And this man shows up with New Horizon. I'm like, oh, he's on and then I look to the right, as Azalea in
Yeah.
the middle, and then I'm just like, oh. And then I just watch him play, and I'm like, the lines he's taking are kind of nutty. I'm just like, I've never seen this before. And I just thought it was a really interesting game. I think it ended up in a draw, but it was still like a very close game. I felt like both you and Nick Butcher had to play like very very well to get to that stage. So I figured let's bring Denny back on. Very very well spoken. Denny, welcome back to the channel.
Hi,
Um,
well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice to have you back.
Obviously joined by my co-creator, co-commentator, co-caster, co-compatriot Rob on the
Of
right. I mean,
course. Where else would I
he
be?
was he's a big he's a big Azalea fan himself, so I'm sure he's
Until
pretty excited
recently.
to see this
Or not until recently, I mean, since not long ago, I should say.
since not long
Yeah.
ago. So I think maybe we'll start off here. So we had you earlier, kind of alluded to. I said that one already. What with the Lexi, with the nine hole, the 9-0 battle hard Lexi here. Why Azalea? I mean, I don't think Lexi has fallen. Like she's still probably the best deck in the meta. Not old. Oldhim was. I have to remind people for this event, depending when it comes out. For the Calling Singapore, Oldhim was legal. Like, Oldhim ended up winning.
Mhm.
There was a shit ton of Oldhims there. From the looks of it, a lot of good Oldhim players there, right? So Oldhim was definitely legal, but Lexi's still
Yeah.
like very very top of the pack here. But why is it? Why did you decide on Azalea?
Right. I think initially, after the Battle Hardened, I kind of want to pick up like a different deck. So I started playing Azaleas the beginning of this year. It was a Death Dealer build, right? So your OG pre-Outsiders Azalea. So I bring it for a bit, and then I think in the beginning of the year, like there are a couple of pro quests as well. So I think yeah, I enjoyed playing it. But after Outsiders came out, so Lexi got, or rather Ranger got buffed, right? Like by a
Yeah,
lot, and everyone started playing. In the beginning, I think everyone started playing Azalea first,
Hmm.
like, oh,
yeah,
Azalea is like so strong, and but after a while, like people realized that whatever buff Azalea, buff Lexi as well.
yeah,
Then you have
Yep.
like
Yep.
super aggressive like Lexi build, pretty much useless, right? Um,
Right.
but after a while, I just find that because a lot of people playing Ranger, um, I find Ranger is strongest when they are not in the meta. Like they're not
Mm,
like the main hero. They're like the underdog, right? So people
right.
don't
mhm,
tech too much against her.
Yeah.
And when Lexi is like around, instantly everyone is like having like at least 3 CNCs in their deck, and and a lot of people are starting to tech against Lexi. There are a lot of for instance, like I think Uzuri is there because Lexi is there.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So Uzuri has a lot
Right.
of bad matchups such as Jomai and Oldims, right? But then like because Lexi is there, then there are more and more Uzuri.
Balances out a little bit. Yeah, counter it.
Yeah. So and I think most important it was because like after a while, like I kind of like stopped enjoying playing Lexi because like the lines can kind of get similar, especially like on Fuseless.
Mm,
You are like shooting 3 arrows a turn, and then the next turn is the same
it's
thing over
very
and over again.
redundant. Yeah,
Yep.
playstyle.
Yeah, especially like when it comes to the mirror match, it's not exactly enjoyable.
Right.
Mm.
Um,
Just win the
yeah,
roll,
it's like
man. It's easy.
yeah, who
Win the
draws?
roll.
Yeah, I don't think even it's like the dice roll, right? It's more towards like who draw like your first like rain reserves or like your
Right.
first three of a kind.
Like whoever gets put on the
So
back foot first is basically behind all game.
exactly, and I think after a while, like I was like trying to look out for like what other decks out there because like I tried a bit of Azalea and then like Jacob from Card Advantage, right? Like top 8 in the calling, and I was
Mm,
like, oh, this looks interesting. Like this is something that I've never tried before, and I didn't have doubt that the deck is strong considering the fact that he could top 8, right?
yep.
And but the thing is more towards like, do I have the skill to pilot this? Because like after like playing it once or twice in the armory, I realized that there are so many decision points that you have to make, whether or not like you're gonna like shoot the additional arrow, not arrow, like your buffs, or you want to
Yep.
live it for next turn.
Right.
Like you could have like multiple arrows a turn, but do you want to like which one do you want to shoot? So like I find that like very challenging, but because of that I just find like that joy of like spark of like wanting to play this deck more and more, trying to string together like what's the best play for that turn. Yeah, so having that in mind and setting myself like the end goal is like calling. So I just took the Azalea. This SANDSCOUR is Azalea to the different RTNs and take them like as a practice, you know.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
that's why.
Yeah, and following up with the second question about the just kind of this build specifically has something that's very, I guess, unique, and it's New Horizon. I've played
Right.
Azalea multiple times, and I've never even considered running New Horizon, but seeing you
Hmm.
play made a lot of sense. So we were kind of wondering, was there a main reason for running it, and is it strictly better than the cross wrap?
Right. I think it depends on I wouldn't say it's strictly better because like even like in the Singapore calling, shout out to Aaron because he made it like 11th on your OG,
The
Azalea.
regulars, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't think it's strictly better, but it has sort of like a different play style, I would say. Because to me, New Horizon gives this sort of new edge where you can sort of save your arrow for later. Like like we infamously have like that turn where like we just draw blanks and then we opt blank, Azalea blind blank.
Been
You
there,
know,
been there, done that. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so you can have like 7 straight cards without like any arrows, but New Horizons sort of fix that because you can sort of have like multiple arrows in your arsenal
Mm,
and just leave it there until you need it, right? So I think that's like one of the strength for New Horizon, like the idea of like saving it for later. Even like the buffs itself. Like for instance, like maybe you have like a Seek and Destroy and Lace of Inertia. They practically do the same thing. You don't have to shoot both at once. You could have one in your arsenal and like leave it for a next turn. Um,
right.
or or just the fact that sometimes you may not have an arrow with a aim counter, for instance, like if you were to codex it, or but if you
Mm,
were on SANDSCOUR, most of the time you would have aim counter. But when
right.
you're on Dreadbore, you may not have aim counter, right?
Yep.
So you want to like save, say, Dead Eye to leave it for later, or like Melting Point to leave it for later, when the on hit is more relevant. Yeah. So I just find like all those like trying to fit the puzzle together like very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it also makes sense because you don't want to get like locked into one arsenal spot when you have a card that you can't really get out as easily.
Yeah.
Like if you put like an arrow end of your turn and it's like, oh, you can't really just fire it and then get it go again
Mm,
somehow. It's like you gotta blind Azalea it or use your cross wrap, hopefully get an arrow on
yep.
top Azalea it. So I see having the extra arsenal slot being very practical in
The
Azalea
best
actually.
thing is that it's fine to blind Azalea in the eye. The eye stares back
Oh,
at you, but it's fine.
true. It's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a card to put in the arsenal right there.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so I guess for me, when I was looking at it, it was kind of difficult for me to like pinpoint what exactly comes in every matchup and what kind of gets switched in and out. So maybe if you
Hmm.
could talk a little bit about your core cards that you put into the deck itself that
Hmm.
don't come out in any of the matchups, so really integral to your plan, and,
Okay.
and what exactly is your main strategy with this deck? Are you like a very aggressive deck? Are you more of like a mid-rangey deck, or like are you
A
comboing on
combo.
specific
Yeah.
cards? Yeah, like what's your like main game plan, assuming that they're like letting you perform your game plan essentially?
Hmm. I tend to overvalue the arsenal. Like it may or may not be a good thing. Like I tend to overvalue the fact that we can have two arsenals, so I kind of want to set up like to have two arsenals most of the time.
Mm,
So that's why like the cards such as like Premeditate and the Heat Seeker combo, that's like probably your best shot in like getting double arsenal by the end of the turn.
yeah. That's the
So
Lexi
especially
player in you, I think. Trying to
yeah,
get a full six cards.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of like it's different, right, when it comes to like playing Azalea because it's like if it's double arrow, you don't have access like such as a Snapdragon, so it's gonna get stuck there. But it also gives you the opportunity to just say block out the following turn, right? Just because like if you draw multiple arrows, I think it's the same thing when it comes to like the DD Azalea as well. When you draw like multiple arrows some of those arrows gonna be used to block anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there's that. Heat Seeker and the Premeditate is always gonna be there in most of the in all the matchups actually. So for this deck, I think Azaleas especially, and when it comes to like fighting the aggro matchups such as Lexi and the ninjas like Katsu, they are very aggressive and they can. You pretty much just need to give them one turn and they can like overturn the entire advantage that you already have.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that damage is good. So that is why like Blood Rot is really great. I think there are multiple games where I presented like 3 Blood Rots, on hit, and I think that's like the most important thing, especially when it comes to matchups that you can't, when it's hard to actually close the game. For instance, like a very defensive Oldhims or where very defensive, say Azuri, on hit 3 Blood Rot can be very it can actually help to close the life gap in between, and that's why like I find that this infecting shots and lace are like one of the best arrows in the deck. Um, and I think we all know that Azalea is very susceptible to D-Rex, and hence like the release detentions there.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so most decks don't really run a lot of D-Rex, but when they do, they probably would want to arsenal them so that they can help it. They can help to block the turn where we dominate with like some relevant on hits, and that's where like release the tension comes in. Initially, I had like an additional read the glide path instead of the yellow release the tension, but I find that the additional release the tension did help in a lot of matches. And similarly, Remorseless is there for the same reason. It helps to block out your defense direction from Arsenal. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely.
yep. So I think that's the core. I think like things like Codex is Codex
Yeah.
is just your ranger cut now.
Yeah.
It's always gonna be there.
Yep.
But it's also interesting because like if let's say you draw like an entire handful of buffs, a Codex is still a very valid play. You just play everything and then like you Codex like a 0 cost arrow such as like drill shot, and then
Yeah.
you just shoot for like maybe 15 to 17.
Right.
Yeah. Um.
What a
Absolutely.
card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I guess Heat Seeker might be one of those cards that you pretty much want to keep most of the time because of New Horizon,
Yeah.
maybe? It kind of
Yeah.
really feeds into
So
that playstyle.
definitely. Yeah.
Awesome. So that was the main board. Let's move on maybe to the sideboard and see,
Mm.
what cards come in certain matchups.
Mhm.
Did it work? Right? Like, is it kind of more like theory, or was it more like, what really happened?
Right.
So yeah, I guess we can just dive into the sideboard.
Sure. I think we just go through like one by one, like starting for like
Sure.
the Barb Undertow.
Absolutely.
So Barb Undertow is there for Guardians. It is the writ in the ledger for Guardians, because Guardians run a lot of blues. So on hit, this is super relevant. In those matches, especially with the aim counter, right? So, but the thing is that although it costs 1, into most of these matches, you will play Dreadbore.
Right.
And in order for us to give like a what's that aim counter, you kind of have to use Crow's Nest
Right.
ability, and you have to pay additional 1. So it's kind of like one for shooting and one for the aim counter, so 2 port by itself. But I think it's really great because um the on hit is really relevant into like these heroes, and many times I think there are like a couple of games I met 4 Oldims in
Yeah, okay.
calling.
So good call, yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually there are like actually multiple times where this managed to hit and the opponent just can't do anything their turn. They're just Arsenal pass, or even better, like when I had like release the tension, they could just pitch away like their D-Reacts, and then they draw up and still draw blanks, and the following turn is just a pass. So this really shut them down if it hits. And it's also in when I'm playing into what's that? A Briar. I didn't mean any Briar, but I think it's pretty good into Briar, because like in order for them to play their channel Mount Heroic, they need at least a blue. So it sort of like
True.
stopped them from playing the channel Mount Heroic that
Right.
turn.
And if you stop them from that, like they can't really come back, right? Like that's their main
Yes.
bread and butter. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And into them, of course, you have your Raid in the Ledger package, right? So it's sort of like stop them for a turn for you to fish out like another Raid in the Ledger turn or an immobilizing shot. So it's yeah, those are actually bordered in as well. Yep.
Awesome. All right,
Yep.
battering bolt.
Battering
Draw
bolt
mic?
is like yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
popper, but during their RTNs, I met quite a number of warriors, and this is really good into warriors.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, into Doranthea especially, like if you can dominate this with say release the tension to block them blocking from Arsenal, this tends to take at least like another 1 or 2 cards from their hand because of the attack react. And even if it doesn't, the additional information on their hand is really important as a
Yeah.
because playing against a warrior is more of a mind game, right?
Absolutely.
So it kind of it the ability to read your opponent's hand can be very important.
Yep.
Of course, like it works as a poppers as well, and it's probably the only poppers in this list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No CNCs,
and
I think, as far as I could tell.
no
Right? Yeah. No CNC.
no CNC.
Yeah.
It's also good into I also run this into like a defensive deck, such as like Oldhim and Uzuri, because if you can shut them out from their using their arsenal again, and this would potentially take some defense reaction from their hand as well. I think I did run 1 or 2 into Lexi just so that they want to block if say they have like Rain Razor in their hand.
Right.
Um, yeah, so that is for battering bolt.
Cool. Immobilizing shots.
Immobilizing shot and Raid in the Ledger works the same in my opinion, especially into like most matchups such as Lexi. But the fact that they can use like a non-attack once as well would mean that they can flip open like a Winter Spite and play Winter Spite to an attack action. So we have to take note of that. But most of the time, it's a 0 cost red in the ledger into a lot of heroes, and this just ups the number of times you can sort of use your writ in the ledger. It's like 14 writ in the
Right.
ledgers in the deck.
Okay. Yeah.
3 writ, 3 writs, 2 immobilizing shot, 3 knocks, 3 memorial, and 3 codexes. Sort of like the moment like you kind of want to have 1 in your deck and 1 in your graveyard at any point in time,
Okay.
so you can just alternate between searching from deck and searching from the graveyard.
Right.
And this 5 has I mean I met like I think 4 Lexis as well. I don't think like one of the Lexi high rolled me like super
Oh,
early
yeah?
game, like I couldn't came back.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it was just a turn 2. I think he went first, and then like turn 2, he just like shot me like a 36 damage turn, and I can't come back from that. I was just
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah,
It reminds me of the
30
good old days with like Art of War, Creative a Kind, Rain Razor, the whole
Yeah.
package. Yeah.
I was like, well, I guess, and that was my first match, and I guess I was like, okay, good game.
I
I can't
guess.
come back from that. Yeah.
Oh,
But most
man.
of the games is that because you have like a lot of access to Raid in the Ledger and Mobilizing Shot, it's quite a miserable game for Lexi, to be honest. You don't have to dominate most of the time. You can just throw a say 10 or above, because Lexi do have like 2 blocks as well, or if they have Rain Razor in their hand,
No block.
it's a bit hard to block as well. And sometimes, actually, most of the times, like many Lexis don't run Purge Grappler as well. So even like sending like a 5 dominated is
It's, like,
actually very relevant.
Unblockable. Yeah.
Yeah, unless you want to give me your New Horizon
New
that
Horizon.
early, but
That's right.
but otherwise it's quite unblockable for 5 dominate. And even 4 dominate, it would take at least like your tunic. So
Right.
it's like a trade-off where which one do you want to give.
Yeah.
So I think the entire game plan for immobilizing shot and written ledger is for all the aggro matchups. Essentially, your Lexi, your what's that? The Phi
Briar, I guess?
First
Katsu.
Fire
Yeah,
Katsu.
Briar.
Yeah.
Right, Katsu, yeah.
Yeah, Briar, Viscerai. Yeah, all those
Right.
matchups.
Makes
Yeah.
especially more sense in like Runeblade because they thrive on the attack, one non-attack thing, so
Yes,
they kind of get
exactly.
multiple attacks off in that case.
Mm.
What about
Yeah.
the what about Murkmire? Murkmire grapnel.
Murkmire, it's really there because of the prevention of prevention.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think this game actually closed one of my oldhim games because like
Okay.
they couldn't what's that? The crown of seeds doesn't prevent
Right.
the damage. Yeah, so
Right.
it was exactly lethal.
Oh, fantastic.
Um, yeah. So I think this particular card I wanted to run three. It's just that I didn't really have a space.
Right, because there's
Of course, the
one's
oldhim's out.
also main boarded, right? Too, I think.
Yeah, one
Yeah,
in the
one is
main.
main
Yeah.
One
board.
main. Okay, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So this is the same idea as like what Jacob did, I guess. It's just that the additional one is for those older matchups where you don't want them to prevent this particular damage, and it's a 0 for 5, most of the
Right.
time.
Right.
So it's great. Sometimes you can't in the main board it's because it's 0 for 5 because if you're talking about SANDSCOUR,
SANDSCOUR.
aim counter is free.
Right.
SANDSCOUR the aim counter is free, right? But into Dread board you kind of have to pay for that additional one attack.
Right.
So that's why it's like we only run one in the main board. Especially when
Okay.
you want to close the game. Knock to this is 0 for 5 dominated.
Mm,
So it's a pretty good value, I
right.
would say.
Awesome. I'm not used to seeing Ren the Ledger in the sideboard actually, so I'm curious to know why is it here.
Right. So I think that's like most of the time this would be in.
Okay, yeah. So
Which
it's
matchups?
kind of like a pseudo main board card, I guess.
Yeah, it's a pseudo main board card, but I think sometimes is it even like do I
I
run
guess
it in
into
Uzuri?
maybe like Guardians where they don't have many actions to play, right? It's like, oh, I have one action. Okay, I'll just pitch 9 or pitch something for a big attack. I guess.
Yeah. But even like into Bravo, you kind of want it in because
Oh,
so that they can't use it works the same way as Sleep Dart, to be honest, into Bravo.
true,
And you
because they can't
prevent
like dominate and then
Mm.
Mhm. Yeah,
come in,
use
right?
the actual ability.
Yeah, and you prevent them from like having that browse turn as
Oh,
well.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think most of the time this is actually in the main board, I think.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's probably a niche case where it doesn't come in, but yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I can't think on top of my head which one it
Yeah.
is, but yeah.
I guess Sleep Dart's similar situation. I've seen this in sideboards multiple times before, so basically if it's
right.
irrelevant on hit for their hero ability.
Yeah. So I think like the only time like I sideboard out like the red in Ledger earlier is probably into Wizards.
Oh, okay.
Because you
Yeah,
don't
that
really
makes
need
that makes a
you
lot
don't
of
really need
sense.
the red
You'd probably prefer like
Ledger.
the 0 costed four damage
Yes.
arrows because you can pitch to block their damage, then come in with an arrow still. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because into damage is just damage, There
Right.
there's no relevant on hit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. All right. Yeah. So Sleep Dart, is there any specific matchup that you put this in?
Viscera is definitely in because Sleep Darts kind of read as no additional damage for you
Yeah.
because of the rune hunt. Like I think like there have been like several matches that I play like Sleep Darts into Viscera, not on the calling itself, but like generally when I play into Viscera, it saves me at least 3-4 lives, especially when they do like a moderate type turn.
Yeah.
You kind of save a lot of damage from a single Sleep Dart, so the value is pretty high up there. And Sleep Dart itself has pretty relevant on hits into most heroes in the current
Right.
meta, such as like Dromai, your dragons can't go again.
Oh yeah, that's a good
And
one.
then and then like even into Lexi, I'm not sure. I don't think I run this into Lexi, but it can be relevant as well, especially when they don't have any more Snapdragon.
Right.
And I always main board this into Katsu because Katsu's on hit is more on hit. More on hit, more damage, more draws, and you
Yeah.
don't want those. So it's
Absolutely.
actually stops them from tutoring like their
Any other
combo
gust
lines.
waves? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
the many gust waves they can get access to. Yeah.
Unless they already have like
They
a
have it.
natural.
Yeah.
If they have it, they have it. Yes.
It happens all the
But,
time. Yeah. They just always have it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. And I see the one copy of Remembrance.
It's
Oldhim?
really just for older.
Just
Yeah.
Oldhim?
Yeah. I'm
like,
gonna.
whenever you see Remembrance, the sideboard, it's like, oh, it's Oldhim.
Yeah, it's
There's
like
the Oldhim text.
once Oldhim's gone, like Remembrance stonks. Just like no one's gonna play the card anymore, basically.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
still consider it like for Uzuri because like sometimes it's relevant to bring back all the release the tension back into the deck and your buffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe one copy, but I'm not sure because it's not as even though like Azuri is very defensive, I think no one tops Oldhim when it comes to that. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right. I guess there's some equipment we see in the bottom here. Bullseye Bracers is now a sideboard card.
it's just for the AV.
Just for the AV. Actually, what's in the
Yep,
main board? What's the glove you run? The the Hornets thing, of course. Yeah. So this is
yep.
the main board card. Gotcha.
So Hornet's thing plus Purge Grappler is really to block CNC.
Okay, yeah, that makes
Right. He's like
sense.
3
Yeah.
armor. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. And we've have the Crow's Nest offhand.
Mm.
So this one is not run
Yep.
into every matchup, I assume.
Yep, this is only together with like Dread 4, which is only into Oldhim and Azuri and Arachne. Yep.
Okay.
All the defensive decks to like push
Yep.
your actual damage. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
That covers
perfect.
the dread board.
That covers Dreadbore, and then we have
And Nullrune is just Nullrune.
speaks for itself, Kano, or I guess anyone.
Yep.
Icelander.
Yeah, Icelander as well. Actually, were
That's
there
the
any?
thing into Kano.
Yeah.
Into Kano, it's actually pretty bad, this list. It's
Okay.
actually pretty hard into Kano.
That's actually
But-
it's the most. I think that's the most common thing that people
Yeah,
will
you
say
don't
is
have
like
a
you
ton
don't
of blues,
prepare
yeah.
a list for Kano. It's like
Yeah.
if you face a Kano, you just die, right? Because
Or
no
that
one can really
initially, I
prepare.
only run one. I only run one AB initially. I only run Bullseye Bracers.
Just the
But I
bracers.
realized that Icelander is sort of still relevant,
Yeah.
and the additional Nullrune boots actually helps a lot in that matchup. So it's like it's one card that improves like 5 to 10%. So yeah, I'm down.
Yeah.
Just put it in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah. Actually, did you see any Icelanders?
I myself didn't meet
Okay.
any, but I
Good.
do know there's one in top 8, I think. So
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but good job dodging those.
yep.
Awesome. I guess that wraps
No,
up
that's
the
fair.
sideboard. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah. Scrolling back up to the main board just a little bit here. As far as the kind of buffs, like just the general, I mean, you have pretty much all of them. I noticed that you picked like Blood Rot, Inertia, and you have Melting Point, but no like Frailty, like Lace of Frailty, which is something that probably quite popular into like anti-ninja and anti-lexi. And I would have assumed that that would be something that you possibly are thinking of. Is there a particular reason why you chose like the bust that you did?
Right. I initially thought of like running, Lace of Frailty as well, over Inertia. I ended up choosing this because we already run Codex of Frailty. That's automatically like
Okay.
one Frailty for them.
Right.
And I the one of the blue two of the blue slots I run Withering, to actually give Frailty, and I think that's like in my opinion, it's like more than enough to have some sort of like a important, because like even the blue ones, it is a 1 for 4, meaning that you kind of have to block with more than a card unless you have like a sing below.
True.
So I think it should be sufficient. But of course, I do understand like some people actually like to run like even the red withering shot into say Lexi and I think mainly Lexi as well, because like their rain razor return would be just a +1, right? But the thing is that the game plan into Lexi is not exactly to slow them down, is to really lock
Right.
them out from playing.
That's why you got cards
So
like the immobilizing shot, right? So you've got like tools that might just stop them
Yeah.
in their tracks. You don't really need to make their arrows weaker.
yeah, so that's the main thought. And into like say of course it's relevant into say Assassin, right? Because they play Spire's Bite.
Yeah.
But into Assassin, you will just melting point them, so
Okay.
they
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
have their bites. And into Katsu, I realized that these days they don't really rely a lot on their Kodachis, because like they run a lot of like the combo cards, right? They would start resurging strike into something, and ended up like dishonoring you. So
Right.
it's not exactly a need to it sort of make it harder for them to trigger Musk, but
Yeah. To get the chain links.
yeah, but then again, it's they don't have to, you know. Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense. The only other question I had was the 3 memorial grounds. Now, I know what the card does, and it's kind of seen as a bit of a vestige of the past here. Like like past Azalea decks kind of needed it because
Mhm.
this Codex doesn't exist, right? And Codex was just
Right.
Yep.
like a better in every single way, shape, or form.
Mm.
Codex doesn't put
Yep.
it at the top of your deck. Sure, you can't Azalea it out, but you're
Yep.
running 3 of them,
Mhm.
which is I don't think I've seen 3 before. I think I've seen like 1 or 2, even in the old
Mhm.
lists.
Mhm.
Now is this just like anti-fatigue just to make sure you can close out a game, or is there a specific reason that you'd like 3 of them?
I think it's more towards on top of the deck means pre-aim counter. I think the SANDSCOUR actually makes Memorial Ground make sense because you don't
Okay.
have to actually use Azalea's ability. You can actually just Memorial Ground, put an arrow on top of your deck, and then
That's
you
not
just
Scar.
teach the SANDSCOUR to load it. So there's that, and because like cards such as the what's that Barb Undertow and Immobilizing Shot requires an aim counter, so it has to be from the top of the deck.
Right.
It
True.
can't be from Codex. So I think
Right.
if I don't run any of the aim counter cards attacks, maybe not so much on the Memorial Ground. Yeah, I think it makes sense to have 1 or 2, but I think it helps a lot, especially like into matches where you want your Deadeye and Melting Point to hit with on hit. The Memorial Ground helps together with the SANDSCOUR itself. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay. No, that totally makes sense. I guess moving on to the next question here. You already kind of mentioned you played 4 Oldhims. Oldhim is a bit of a nuisance for Ranger in general. Not
It
an
is.
impossible matchup, but it's definitely a very difficult matchup. Probably one of the most difficult matchup since the matchups were a thing. Even without
Yeah.
Codex, it's still a very difficult matchup for Lexi and Azalea. So now that Oldhim will be, I think, end of July. I think July 4th no,
Mm-hmm. I
July 3rd
think
is the
beginning of
next
July.
official one. Yeah, beginning of July. Like after that,
Mm-hmm.
none of the events well, Oldhim won't be legal for those events. So, what kind of changes do you think you would make to this particular, other than maybe the Remembrance being the most
Mm,
obvious one? What kind of changes would you make to the deck, knowing for either yourself or other people that might want to play it
mm,
post, when Oldhim is LL'd out?
right. I think one of the most likely drill shot will be out because I
Right,
think the entire idea of having a drill shot there is to try to take
Rampart.
Rampart away.
Yeah,
Yeah. Drill shot will be out, and we still don't know much about like what heroes, like how rampant the new Prism will be.
Mm-hmm.
But I reckon that we're gonna have more Murkmire in the list.
yeah. Ward is a pesky thing, isn't it?
Right.
Spectral shields,
Yeah,
ward, just kill arrow, just kill all of it with grapple.
yeah, kill all of it at once.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just a
pretty
tall
useful.
Dominator Murkmire for 10. Yeah, just take it,
And
kill all the heralds at once.
they just like double soul shield and you cry.
Exactly. So you never know. So it's like we don't know what's out there like for the upcoming meta, and I think we can have more space to account for Dromai, because I think I did not mention Dromai at all, but this list really give up on Dromai matchups. Um, we can't win Dromai other than the fact that if they were to run on a red liner, maybe you can
Mm.
just repeat and
Like
recycle
pretend
the
they're just like an
ledger.
aggro deck essentially. Yeah, just like play them as
Yeah,
you would any other aggro deck.
yep. If that's the case, then you would have a chance. But if it is like a dragons build, or even especially like the big dragons, yeah, your chance of winning is really thin. So maybe if let's say now that we have more sideboard space, we can actually try to think of like how to play against Dromai. But the thing is that I have not found the answer. It's a really hard matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Like but maybe because like we have New Horizon, Down and Dirty might be an option. Just leave it there for a while until you want to pop a dragon. But then again, like this deck lacks go again, so you can't exactly kill a dragon and then still like load an arrow, and it's because those kind of things makes it a little bit hard to face Jomai. But we'll see how the meta shapes during the Dusk Till Dawn. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
red fletch is actually good, I think, into Jomai.
Mm.
It could potentially replace like maybe one melting point, perhaps. Um, because red fletch into Dromai probably means additional +4. Yeah,
Yeah, for all the invokes, everything, all the 3 blocks are now doomed
2.
essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're all 2, and then their
Yeah.
red 2s are now 1 if they have any. But like,
Right.
yeah.
no, that totally makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, the last question I've got is I know we talked a lot about the different matchups like the Lexi, the Rune Blades. Um, was there a matchup that we haven't talked about yet that you wanted to kind of bring up? Maybe something that you faced, in the event, or anything you want to talk
Right.
about in terms of matchups?
I think one thing that came to my mind is actually the Icelander. I didn't meet any, but I think Icelander is a um Icelander may have a comeback, right? And I think this list actually I would say it's about like 40 to 50% chance into Icelander
Okay,
with AB2. But
that's not
it's a
bad.
very patient game. Yeah, it's a very patient game because you kind of um, don't want to get blown out by like say a frostbite and you just don't have a turn.
Mm,
So the double arsenal actually helps a lot because you have a 4 cards to pitch, and then like the double arsenal. As long as you have 1/0 cost arrow in your arsenal, you're good. Like you can shoot it out. Like you sort of like have that opportunity to do it with like New Horizon. And even though like you may have like a 4 red hands, which is not uncommon with this list,
right.
but it could happen. But 4 reds can still mean that you pitch one for say cold snap, additional one for frostbite. You still have like 2 cards arsenal, and so it's still very doable if you have like
Okay,
multiple arsenal. Yeah.
that makes sense. So like on
Yeah.
like the worst pitch curve hand you have, you can still get by, right?
You can still shoot like 4 damage, maybe like a 7,
Right.
so it's still all right. Yeah.
Gotcha. Any other matchups that come to mind, or
I think that's
so you mostly saw old
about it.
hymns
Yeah.
basically, right? Just a bunch
Yeah,
of old
mostly
hymns,
Oldhim
some
and
Lexis.
Lexi.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
checks out. I think that's basically the meta we're in these days.
Yep.
For now, yeah.
For now, for
For
now.
now.
Yeah.
I guess the last point is we didn't really mention it, but like at the very beginning, I kind of mentioned seeing you on stream. I think you were X2 when I saw you on stream, if I recall. I think.
Yes.
So that would have been like 8-2 or something at that point because we were on day 2
Yep.
already.
Mhm.
Just for everyone watching at home, how did you how did that kind of game play out, and what kind of happened after? Because I just remember seeing a
This is
lot
the,
of
the
old
Nick
America,
Butcher
but
matchup.
And I lost to
that
Nick
was
Butchers. He's like an amazing player, and I
yeah.
think Dreadbore is like I think it got out like that I was playing Dreadbore, so they just tech against Dreadbore, and
Oh,
I had a bad time. So at the moment like they revealed when Nick revealed like his equipment like an Anathos, then I was like, yep, I'm in a big time. I'm gonna face like such a aggressive like Oldhim, and he's even running like Mage Master boots. So it
true.
was pretty tough. It was pretty brutal. Because after that met I think I met Matt Rogers after that. So which is who is also an Oldhim as well. But by then it's like everyone caught up that I'm running Dreadbore into Oldhim. So teching against me against Dreadbore was really good. It's
You just
hard
don't
to
run
play
it.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You had to like reverse psychology it by like not running
yeah.
Dreadbore.
Which I did into
Oh,
Met,
to Matt.
and
Okay, yeah.
it didn't work. It didn't work. Like I'd
Ah.
run SANDSCOUR into Met, but it didn't work because
Yeah.
I realized that even though like you run SANDSCOUR, or Dreadboard for that matters, all of them will still run at least staunches.
Okay, yeah.
So the staunches actually blows the deck away. Like when you're trying to like shoot for like a very tall attacks, and then for instance like 14 to 16 and then like got blocked out, it's you are losing a lot of tempo, you're losing a lot of
Yeah.
value in that game. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because you got to keep like the whole hand to be able to do that kind of thing. So you
Exactly.
probably sacrifice some damage. They'd have to pitch like 2 cards in a staunch, and they're okay basically. So
Yeah, and they're like
yeah.
pitching like for like 2 and then block for 10. Was it 10 staunch, the red
I think
staunch?
it
9.
was 7 plus 3
Yeah.
or something.
It's a 2
Yeah.
for 7 on the red, and then they could just
Yeah,
Right.
double pitch for 10.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's actually one card to block my full cards. It's a very value card.
Yeah, it's a
So
good trade for them for sure.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I lost my first two match in calling. Like I lost the first to Alexi, and then like I went to a draw into the Oldhim during my second match. So I started calling not great.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pretty bad. It's pretty rough.
You came back strong though.
Yeah. And I gotta admit Nick and Matt
Yep.
because like I mean most of the time it's always like these people are on screen, right? And it was like
Right.
oh these great players like they're playing on screens and etc. Now I'm sitting in front of them, so
Right.
the pressure's there.
That's true. Yeah,
So
a bit of intimidation factor maybe, right? Especially being on camera too. Like I'm sure I'd play differently if I was on the big screen. I don't know about you, but just the pressure of
me
knowing
too.
people are watching
Like
me now.
Yeah, you
the
definitely play
moment
differently.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah the moment they mention like oh this is like the feature table, I'm like oh no.
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh, please let me play somewhere else.
Yep.
No,
Yeah.
I think you still play quite well. I'd recommend anyone who wants to see this deck in action go check out the
It
Fable.
was Fable was the stream that I was on. Yeah.
Yeah, on YouTube, you'll be able to see just watching Denny's lines to really get a grasp on like what this deck is. You know, just ignore the Oldhim. Just the Oldhim's not really doing anything, just blocking. So just look at the Azalea side to like, get a better picture. Because I feel like this deck you really do need to like watch it.
Watch it in action. Yeah.
I feel like you can't just like pick up this list and be like, oh yeah, let's just play this like a regular Lexi list or like I feel like
Right.
this list needs a lot of practice. in
Yeah,
my
and
opinion.
I'll also
So,
add that like the general Azalea plan before was to like block with a few arrows and come in with something strong with like Tunic or something, right? That was kind of like the what made her so
Popular
good
plan.
was that you can just block up a bit and come back like with something still strong. With this list, I feel like it's a lot different, right? You're not really doing that strategy anymore. It's like you're going for that big 6-card hand, which Azalea typically had a hard time doing, you know, in the past, right? So very different, very different.
yeah. Do you so that was kind of all we had. Do you have any like shout outs that you want to give or any appreciations, thank yous, what have you?
Definitely, I just want to shout out like to one of my friend, Deng Wai. He, the day before calling, I was like, dude, I have been on a losing streak on Talishar like for the past like 10 games or so. I'm
Oh,
like,
Goddamn
I'm
Charizard.
questioning my decision,
oh no.
and he was like. No, man. It's like you're into this. You have practiced a lot and etc. So it's like just go with it. Like just have fun. You enjoy the game, and that's the most important thing. So that's what I did, and yeah. So I'm really thankful for him,
Yeah.
and everyone during the calling. All my friends who was there. Like during after my second loss, I was like super down. I was like, oh. Then everyone still encouraged me, like, yeah, just continue playing on.
Yeah.
See how it goes. Yeah,
Good
so
advice.
I'm
Good
really thankful
friends.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
No, that's totally true. Well, appreciate you coming on, Denny. I knew we needed someone who really knew how this deck worked to
Oh yeah.
explain it to
If
us.
I tried this on stream, I would probably play a quarter of as good as you.
No, that's
Which
not happening.
I should
That's not
I should try the deck. But yeah.
happening. God. Anyways,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
appreciate you coming on, Denny. I can't wait to see your the next list that we're obviously going to bring you on for. Just like call it the Prism Killer or something like that.
Right.
But either way, appreciate this list. And for everyone watching, if you like this kind of content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. The deck list will be in the description. If you have any questions for Denny, you can leave them in the YouTube comment, and he may or may not respond depending if he wants to, but you can try, right? And with that, from wherever you're watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bye for now.